just as I have been commanded." At this Aaron spoke to Moses, "Look, today they have presented their sin offering and their burnt offering before Jehovah, while such things as these began to befall me. And had I eaten the sin offering today, would it prove satisfactory in Jehovah's eyes?" When Moses got to hear that, then it proved satisfactory in his eyes. Chapter 11. And Jehovah proceeded to speak to Moses and Aaron, saying to them, "Speak to the sons of Israel, saying, This is the living creature that you may eat of all the beasts that are upon the earth. Every creature that splits the hoof and forms a cleft in the hoofs, and chews the cud among the beasts, that is what you may eat. Only this is what you must not eat among the chewers of the cud and the splitters of the hoof: the camel, because it is a chewer of the cud, but is no splitter of the hoof. It is unclean for you. Also the rock badger, because it is a chewer of the cud, but does not split the hoof. It is unclean for you. Also the hare, because it is a chewer of the cud, but it does not have the hoof split. It is unclean for you. Also the pig, because it is a splitter of the hoof, and a former of a cleft in the hoof, but it itself does not chew the cud. It is unclean for you. You must not eat any of their flesh, and you must not touch their dead body. They are unclean for you. This is what you may eat of everything that is in the waters, everything that has fins and scales in the waters, in the seas and in the torrents, those you may eat. And everything in the seas and the torrents that has no fins and scales, out of every swarming creature of the waters, and out of every living soul that is in the waters, they are a loathsome thing for you. Yes, they will become a loathsome thing to you. You must not eat any of their flesh, and you are to loathe their dead body. Everything in the waters that has no fins and scales is a loathsome thing to you. And these are what you will loathe among the flying creatures. They should not be eaten. They are a loathsome thing: the eagle, and the osprey, and the black vulture, and the red kite, and the black kite, according to its kind, and every raven according to its kind, and the ostrich, and the owl, and the gull, and the falcon according to its kind, and the little owl, and the cormorant, and the long-eared owl, and the swan, and the pelican, and the vulture, and the stork, the heron according to its kind, and the hoopoe, and the bat. Every winged, swarming creature that goes on all fours is a loathsome thing to you. Only this is what you may eat of all the winged, swarming creatures that go upon all fours, those that have leaper legs above their feet with which to leap upon the earth. These are the ones of them you may eat of: the migratory locust according to its kind, and the edible locust after its kind, and the cricket according to its kind, and the grasshopper according to its kind. And every other winged, swarming creature that does have 4 legs is a loathsome thing to you. So by these you would make yourselves unclean. Every one touching their dead bodies will be unclean until the evening. And every one carrying any of their dead bodies will wash his garments, and he must be unclean until the evening. As for any beast that is a splitter of the hoof, but is not a former of a cleft, and is not a chewer of the cud, they are unclean for you. Every one touching them will be unclean. As for every creature going upon its paws, among all the living creatures that go on all fours, they are unclean to you. Every one touching their dead bodies will be unclean until the evening. And he who carries their dead bodies will wash his garments, and he must be unclean until the evening. They are unclean to you. And this is what is unclean to you among the swarming creatures that swarm upon the earth: the mole rat, and the jerboa, and the lizard according to its kind, and the gecko fanfoot, and the large lizard, and the newt, and the sand lizard, and the chameleon. These are unclean to you among all the swarming creatures. Every one touching them in their death state will be unclean until the evening. Now anything upon which any of them should fall in its death state will be unclean, whether it be some wooden vessel, or a garment, or a skin, or sackcloth. Any vessel of which some use is made will be put in water, and it must be unclean until the evening, and then be clean. As for any earthenware vessel into which any of them should fall, anything that is within it will be unclean, and you will smash it. Any sort of food that may be eaten upon which water may come from it will be unclean, and any drink that may be drunk in any vessel will be unclean. And everything upon which any of their dead bodies may fall will be unclean. Whether oven or jar stand, it is to be broken down. They are unclean, and they will become unclean to you. Only a spring and a pit of impounded waters will continue clean, but anyone touching their dead bodies will be unclean. And should any of their dead bodies fall upon any seed of a plant that is to be sown, it is clean. But in case water should be put upon seed, and something of their dead bodies had fallen upon it, it is unclean to you. Now in case any beast that is yours for food should die, he who touches its dead body will be unclean until the evening. And he who eats any of its dead body will wash his garments, and he must be unclean until the evening. And he who carries off its dead body will wash his garments, and he must be unclean until the evening. And every swarming creature that swarms upon the earth is a loathsome thing. It must not be eaten. As for any creature that goes upon the belly, and any creature that goes on all fours, or any great number of feet of all the swarming creatures that swarm upon the earth, you must not eat them, because they are a loathsome thing. Do not make your souls loathsome with any swarming creature that swarms, and you must not make yourselves unclean by them, and actually get unclean by them. For I am Jehovah your God, and you must sanctify yourselves, and you must prove yourselves holy, because I am holy. So you must not make your souls unclean by any swarming creature that moves upon the earth. For I am Jehovah who is leading you up out of the land of Egypt to prove myself God to you, and you must prove yourselves holy, because I am holy. This is the law about the beast and the flying creature and every living soul that moves about in the waters, and concerning every soul that swarms upon the earth, in order to make a distinction between the unclean and the clean, and between the living creature that is eatable and the living creature that may not be eaten. Chapter 12. And Jehovah went on to speak to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, saying, In case a woman conceives seed and does bear a male, she must be unclean 7 days, as in the days of the impurity, when she is menstruating, she will be unclean. And on the 8th day the flesh of his foreskin will be circumcised. For 33 days more she will stay in the blood of purification. She should not touch any holy thing, and she should not come into the holy place until the fulfilling of the days of her purification. Now if she should bear a female, she must then be unclean 14 days, as during her menstruation. For 66 days more she will stay with the blood of purification. Then at the fulfilling of the days of her purification for a son or for a daughter, she will bring a young ram in its first year for a burnt offering, and a male pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering to the entrance of the tent of meeting to the priest. And he must present it before Jehovah and make atonement for her, and she must be clean from the source of her blood. This is the law about her who bears either a male or a female. But if she cannot afford enough for a sheep, she must then take 2 turtle doves or 2 male pigeons, one for a burnt offering and one for a sin offering, and the priest must make atonement for her, and she must be clean. Chapter 13. And Jehovah proceeded to speak to Moses and Aaron, saying, In case a man develops in the skin of his flesh an eruption or a scab or a blotch, and it does develop in the skin of his flesh into the plague of leprosy, he must then be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons, the priests. And the priest must look at the plague in the skin of the flesh. When the hair in the plague is turned white, and the appearance of the plague is deeper than the skin of his flesh, it is the plague of leprosy. And the priest must look at it, and he must declare him unclean. But if the blotch is white in the skin of his flesh, and its appearance is not deeper than the skin, and its hair has not turned white, the priest must then quarantine the plague 7 days. And the priest must look at him on the 7th day, and if in the way it looks the plague has stopped, the plague has not spread in the skin, the priest must also quarantine him another 7 days. And the priest must look at him on the 7th day the second time, and if the plague has grown dull, and the plague has not spread in the skin, the priest must also pronounce him clean. It was a scab, and he must wash his garments and be clean. But if the scab has unquestionably spread in the skin after his appearing before the priest for the establishment of his purification, he must then appear the second time before the priest, and the priest must take a look. And if the scab has spread in the skin, the priest must then declare him unclean. It is leprosy. In case the plague of leprosy develops in a man, he must then be brought to the priest, and the priest must take a look. And if there is a white eruption in the skin, and it has turned the hair white, and the raw of the living flesh is in the eruption, it is chronic leprosy in the skin of his flesh, and the priest must declare him unclean. He should not quarantine him, for he is unclean. Now if the leprosy unquestionably breaks out in the skin, and the leprosy does cover all the skin of the one with the plague from his head to his feet, to the full sight of the priest's eyes, and the priest has looked, and there the leprosy has covered all his flesh, he must then pronounce the plague clean. All of it has turned white. He is clean. But on the day the living flesh appears in it, he will be unclean, and the priest must see the living flesh, and he must declare him unclean. The living flesh is unclean. It is leprosy. Or in case the living flesh goes back, and it does change to white, he must then come to the priest, and the priest must look at him, and if the plague has been changed to white, the priest must then pronounce the plague clean. He is clean. As for the flesh, in case a boil develops in its skin, and it does get healed, and in the place of the boil a white eruption has developed, or a reddish-white blotch, he must then show himself to the priest. And the priest must look, and if its appearance is lower than the skin, and its hair has turned white, the priest must then declare him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. It has broken out in the boil. But if the priest looks at it, and there now there is no white hair in it, and it is not deeper than the skin, and it is dull, the priest must then quarantine him 7 days. And if it unmistakably spreads in the skin, the priest must then declare him unclean. It is a plague. But if in its place the blotch should stand, it has not spread. It is the inflammation of the boil, and the priest must pronounce him clean. Or in case there comes to be a scar in the skin of the flesh from the fire, and the raw flesh of the scar does become a reddish-white blotch or a white one, the priest must then look at it. And if the hair has been changed white in the blotch, and its appearance is deeper than the skin, it is leprosy. It has broken out in the scar, and the priest must declare him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. But if the priest looks at it, and there now there is no white hair in the blotch, and it is not lower than the skin, and it is dull, the priest must then quarantine him 7 days. And the priest must look at him on the 7th day. If it unmistakably spreads in the skin, the priest must then declare him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. But if the blotch stands in its place, it has not spread in the skin, and it is dull, it is an eruption of the scar, and the priest must pronounce him clean, because it is an inflammation of the scar. As for a man or a woman, in case a plague develops in such one on the head or on the chin, the priest must then see the plague. And if its appearance is deeper than the skin, and the hair is yellow and scarce in it, the priest must then declare such one unclean. It is an abnormal falling off of hair. It is leprosy of the head or of the chin. But in case the priest sees the plague of abnormal falling off of hair, and look, its appearance is not deeper than the skin, and there is no black hair in it, the priest must then quarantine the plague of abnormal falling off of hair 7 days. And the priest must look at the plague on the 7th day, and if the abnormal falling off of hair has not spread, and no yellow hair has developed in it, and the appearance of the abnormal falling off of hair is not deeper than the skin, he must then have himself shaved. But he will not have the abnormal falling off of hair shaved, and the priest must quarantine the abnormal falling off of hair 7 days again. And the priest must look at the abnormal falling off of hair on the 7th day, and if the abnormal falling off of hair has not spread in the skin, and its appearance is not deeper than the skin, the priest must then pronounce him clean, and he must wash his garments and be clean. But if the abnormal falling off of hair unmistakably spreads in the skin after the establishment of his purification, the priest must then see him, and if the abnormal falling off of hair has spread in the skin, the priest need not make examination for yellow hair. He is unclean. But if in its look the abnormal falling off of hair has stood and black hair has grown in it, the abnormal falling off of hair has been healed. He is clean, and the priest must pronounce him clean. As for a man or a woman, in case blotches develop in the skin of their flesh, white blotches, the priest must then take a look, and if the blotches in the skin of their flesh are dull white, it is a harmless eruption. It has broken out in the skin. He is clean. As for a man, in case his head grows bald, it is baldness. He is clean. And if his head grows bald up in front, it is forehead baldness. He is clean. But in case a reddish-white plague develops in the baldness of the crown or of the forehead, it is leprosy breaking out in the baldness of his crown or of his forehead. And the priest must look at him. And if there is an eruption of the reddish-white plague in the baldness of his crown or of his forehead, like the appearance of leprosy in the skin of the flesh, he is a leper. He is unclean. Unclean is what the priest should declare him. His plague is on his head. As for the leprous one in whom the plague is, his garment should be torn, and his head should become ungroomed, and he should cover over the mustache and call out, "Unclean, unclean." All the days that the plague is in him, he will be unclean. He is unclean. He should dwell isolated. Outside the camp is his dwelling place. As for a garment, in case the plague of leprosy develops in it, whether in a woolen garment, or in a linen garment, or in the warp, or in the woof of the linen and of the wool, or in a skin, or in anything made of skin, and the yellowish green or reddish plague does develop in the garment, or in the skin, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in any article of skin, it is the plague of leprosy, and it must be shown to the priest. And the priest must see the plague, and he must quarantine the plague 7 days. When he has seen the plague on the 7th day, that the plague has spread in the garment, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in the skin for any use for which the skin may be made, the plague is malignant leprosy. It is unclean. And he must burn the garment, or the warp, or the woof in the wool, or in the linen, or any article of skin in which the plague may develop, because it is malignant leprosy. It should be burned in the fire. But if the priest takes a look, and there now the plague has not spread in the garment, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in any article of skin, the priest must also command that they should wash that in which the plague is, and he must quarantine it a second 7 days. And the priest must look at the plague after it has been washed out, and if the plague has not changed its look, and yet the plague has not spread, it is unclean. You should burn it in the fire. It is a low spot in a threadbare patch on either its underside or its outside. But if the priest has taken a look, and there now the plague is dull after it has been washed out, he must then tear it out of the garment, or the skin, or the warp, or of the woof. However, if it still appears in the garment, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in any article of skin, it is breaking out. you should burn in the fire whatever it is in which the plague is. As for the garment or the warp or the wolf or any article of skin that you may wash, when the plague has disappeared from them, it must then be washed a second time, and it must be clean. This is the law of the plague of leprosy in a garment of wool or of linen, or in the warp, or in the wolf, or in any article of skin, in order to pronounce it clean or to declare it unclean. Chapter 14. And Jehovah continued to speak to Moses, saying, This will become the law of the leper in the day for establishing his purification, when he must be brought to the priest. And the priest must go forth outside the camp, and the priest must look. And if the plague of leprosy has been cured in the leprous one, the priest must then give command, and he must take for cleansing himself 2 live clean birds, and cedar wood, and caucus scarlet material, and hyssop. And the priest must give command, and the one bird must be killed in an earthenware vessel over running water. As for the living bird, he should take it, and the cedar wood, and the caucus scarlet material, and the hyssop, and he must dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water. Then he must spatter it 7 times upon the one cleansing himself from the leprosy, and he must pronounce him clean, and he must send away the living bird over the open field. And the one cleansing himself must wash his garments and shave off all his hair, and bathe in water, and must be clean. And afterward he may come into the camp. And he must dwell outside his tent 7 days. And it must occur on the 7th day that he should shave off all his hair on his head, and his chin, and his eyebrows. Yes, he should shave off all his hair, and he must wash his garments and bathe his flesh in water, and he must be clean. And on the 8th day he will take 2 sound young rams, and 1 sound female lamb in its first year, and 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a grain offering moistened with oil, and 1 log measure of oil. And the priest who pronounces him clean must present the man who is cleansing himself and the things before Jehovah at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And the priest must take the 1 young ram and offer it for a guilt offering together with the log measure of oil, and must wave them to and fro as a wave offering before Jehovah. And he must slaughter the young ram in the place where the sin offering and the burnt offering are regularly slaughtered, in a holy place, because, like the sin offering, the guilt offering belongs to the priest. It is something most holy. And the priest must take some of the blood of the guilt offering, and the priest must put it upon the lobe of the right ear of the one cleansing himself, and upon the thumb of his right hand, and upon the big toe of his right foot. And the priest must take some of the log measure of oil, and pour it upon the priest's left palm. And the priest must dip his right finger into the oil that is upon his left palm, and must spatter some of the oil with his finger 7 times before Jehovah. And of the rest of the oil that is upon his palm, the priest will put some upon the lobe of the right ear of the one cleansing himself, and upon the thumb of his right hand, and upon the big toe of his right foot over the blood of the guilt offering. And what is left over of the oil that is upon the priest's palm, he will put upon the head of the one cleansing himself, and the priest must make atonement for him before Jehovah. And the priest must render up the sin offering and make atonement for the one cleansing himself from his impurity, and afterward he will slaughter the burnt offering. And the priest must offer up the burnt offering and the grain offering upon the altar, and the priest must make atonement for him, and he must be clean. However, if he is lowly and does not have enough means, he must then take 1 young ram as a guilt offering for a wave offering in order to make atonement for him, and 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour moistened with oil as a grain offering, and a log measure of oil, and 2 turtle doves, or 2 male pigeons, according as he may have the means. And the one must serve as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering. And on the 8th day he must bring them for establishing his purification to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting before Jehovah. And the priest must take the young ram of the guilt offering, and the log measure of oil, and the priest must wave them to and fro as a wave offering before Jehovah. And he must slaughter the young ram of the guilt offering, and the priest must take some of the blood of the guilt offering, and put it upon the lobe of the right ear of the one cleansing himself, and upon the thumb of his right hand, and upon the big toe of his right foot. And the priest will pour some of the oil upon the priest's left palm. And the priest must spatter with his right finger some of the oil that is upon his left palm 7 times before Jehovah. And the priest must put some of the oil that is on his palm upon the lobe of the right ear of the one cleansing himself, and upon the thumb of his right hand, and upon the big toe of his right foot, over the place of the blood of the guilt offering. And what is left over of the oil that is on the priest's palm, he will put upon the head of the one cleansing himself, in order to make atonement for him before Jehovah. And he must render up the one of the turtle doves, or of the male pigeons, for which he may have the means, the one of them for which he may have the means as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering, along with the grain offering. And the priest must make atonement for the one cleansing himself before Jehovah. This is the law for the one in whom the plague of leprosy was, who may not have the means when establishing his purification. And Jehovah proceeded to speak to Moses and Aaron, saying, When you come into the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as a possession, and I do put the plague of leprosy in a house of the land of your possession, the one to whom the house belongs must then come and tell the priest, saying, Something like a plague has appeared to me in the house. And the priest must give orders, and they must clear out the house before the priest may come in to see the plague, that he may not declare unclean everything that is in the house, and after that the priest will come in to see the house. When he has seen the plague, then if the plague is in the walls of the house, with yellowish green or reddish depressions, and their appearance is lower than the wall surface, the priest must then go out of the house to the entrance of the house, and he must quarantine the house 7 days. And the priest must return on the 7th day, and must take a look. And if the plague has spread in the walls of the house, the priest must then give orders, and they must tear out the stones in which the plague is, and they must throw them outside the city into an unclean place. And he will have the house scraped off all around inside, and they must pour the clay mortar that they cut off outside the city into an unclean place. And they must take other stones and insert them in the place of the former stones, and he will have different clay mortar taken, and he must have the house plastered. If, though, the plague returns, and it does break out in the house after having torn out the stones, and after having cut off the house and plastered it, the priest must then come in and take a look. And if the plague has spread in the house, it is malignant leprosy in the house. It is unclean. And he must have the house pulled down with its stones and its timbers, and all the clay mortar of the house, and must have it carried forth outside the city to an unclean place. But whoever comes into the house any of the days of quarantining it will be unclean until the evening, and whoever lies down in the house should wash his garments, and whoever eats in the house should wash his garments. However, if the priest comes at all, and he does take a look, and there now the plague has not spread in the house after having plastered the house, the priest must then pronounce the house clean, because the plague has been healed. And to purify the house from sin, he must take 2 birds and cedar wood and caucus scarlet material and hyssop. And he must kill the one bird in an earthenware vessel over running water. And he must take the cedar wood and the hyssop and the caucus scarlet material and the live bird, and dip them in the blood of the bird that was killed and in the running water, and he must spatter it toward the house 7 times. And he must purify the house from sin with the blood of the bird, and the running water, and the live bird, and the cedar wood, and the hyssop, and the caucus scarlet material. And he must send the live bird away outside the city into the open field, and must make atonement for the house, and it must be clean. This is the law respecting any plague of leprosy, and respecting the abnormal falling off of hair, and respecting the leprosy of the garment and in the house, and respecting the eruption and the scab and the blotch, in order to give instructions when something is unclean and when something is clean. This is the law about leprosy. Chapter 15. And Jehovah continued to speak to Moses and Aaron, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, and you must say to them, in case any man has a running discharge occur from his genital organ, his discharge is unclean, and this will become his uncleanness by his discharge. Whether his genital organ has flowed with a running discharge, or his genital organ is obstructed from his running discharge, it is his uncleanness. Any bed upon which the one having a running discharge may lie down will be unclean, and any article upon which he may sit will be unclean. And a man who may touch his bed should wash his garments, and he must bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. And whoever sits upon the article upon which the one having a running discharge was sitting should wash his garments, and he must bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. And whoever touches the flesh of the one having a running discharge should wash his garments, and he must bathe in water and be unclean until the evening. And in the case of the one who has a running discharge, spitting upon someone clean, he must in that case wash his garments and bathe in water and be unclean until the evening. And any saddle upon which the one having a running discharge was riding will be unclean. And anyone touching anything that happens to be under him will be unclean until the evening. And he who carries them will wash his garments, and he must bathe in water and be unclean until the evening. And anyone whom the one having a running discharge might touch when he has not rinsed his hands in water must then wash his garments and bathe in water and be unclean until the evening. And an earthenware vessel that the one having a running discharge might touch should be smashed, and any wooden vessel should be rinsed with water. Now in case the one having a running discharge would become clean from his running discharge, he must then count for himself 7 days for his purification, and he must wash his garments and bathe his flesh in running water, and he must be clean. And on the 8th day he should take for himself 2 turtle doves or 2 male pigeons, and he must come before Jehovah to the entrance of the tent of meeting and give them to the priest. And the priest must offer them, the one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering. And the priest must make atonement for him before Jehovah concerning his running discharge. Now in case a man has an emission of semen go out from him, he must then bathe all his flesh in water, and be unclean until the evening. And any garment and any skin upon which the emission of semen gets to be must be washed with water and be unclean until the evening. As for a woman with whom a man may lie down with an emission of semen, they must bathe in water and be unclean until the evening. And in case a woman is having a running discharge, and her running discharge in her flesh proves to be blood, she should continue 7 days in her menstrual impurity, and anyone touching her will be unclean until the evening. And anything upon which she may lie down in her menstrual impurity will be unclean, and everything upon which she may sit will be unclean. And anyone touching her bed should wash his garments, and he must bathe in water and be unclean until the evening. And anyone touching any article upon which she was sitting should wash his garments, and he must bathe in water and be unclean until the evening. And if it was upon the bed or upon another article that she was sitting, by his touching it he will be unclean until the evening. And if a man lies down with her at all, and her menstrual impurity comes to be upon him, he must then be unclean 7 days, and any bed upon which he might lie down will be unclean. As for a woman, in case the running discharge of her blood should be flowing many days, when it is not the regular time of her menstrual impurity, or in case she should have a flow longer than her menstrual impurity, all the days of her unclean running discharge will prove as in the days of her menstrual impurity. She is unclean. Any bed upon which she may lie, any of the days of her running discharge, will become for her as the bed of her menstrual impurity, and any article upon which she may sit will become unclean, like the uncleanness of her menstrual impurity. And anyone touching them will be unclean, and he must wash his garments and bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. However, if she has become clean from her running discharge, she must also count for herself 7 days, and afterward she will be clean. And on the 8th day she should take for herself 2 turtle doves, or 2 male pigeons, and she must bring them to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And the priest must make the one a sin offering, and the other a burnt offering. And the priest must make atonement for her before Jehovah concerning her unclean running discharge. And you must keep the sons of Israel separate from their uncleanness, that they may not die in their uncleanness for their defiling of my tabernacle, which is in their midst. This is the law about the man having a running discharge, and the man from whom an emission of semen may go out, so that he becomes unclean by it, and the menstruating woman in her uncleanness, and anyone who has a flow of his running discharge, whether a male or a female, and whether a man who lies down with an unclean woman. Chapter 16. And Jehovah proceeded to speak to Moses after the death of Aaron's 2 sons, for their approaching before Jehovah, so that they died. And Jehovah proceeded to say to Moses, Speak to Aaron your brother, that he should not at all times come into the holy place inside the curtain, in front of the cover which is upon the ark, that he may not die, because in a cloud I shall appear over the cover. With the following Aaron should come into the holy place, with a young bull for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. He should put on the holy linen robe, and the linen drawers should come upon his flesh, and he should gird himself with the linen sash and wrap himself with the linen turban. They are holy garments, and he must bathe his flesh in water and put them on. And from the assembly of the sons of Israel he should take 2 male kids of the goats for a sin offering, and 1 ram for a burnt offering. And Aaron must present the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself, and he must make atonement in behalf of himself and his house. And he must take the 2 goats and make them stand before Jehovah at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Aaron must draw lots over the 2 goats, the one lot for Jehovah, and the other lot for Azazel. And Aaron must present the goat over which the lot came up for Jehovah, and he must make it a sin offering. But the goat over which the lot came up for Azazel should be stood alive before Jehovah to make atonement for it, so as to send it away for Azazel into the wilderness. And Aaron must present the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make an atonement in behalf of himself and his house, and he must slaughter the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself. And he must take the fire holder full of burning coals of fire from off the altar before Jehovah, and the hollows of both his hands full of fine perfumed incense, and he must bring them inside the curtain. He must also put the incense upon the fire before Jehovah, and the cloud of the incense must overspread the ark cover, which is upon the testimony, that he may not die. And he must take some of the bull's blood and spatter it with his finger in front of the cover on the east side, and he will spatter some of the blood with his finger 7 times before the cover. And he must slaughter the goat of the sin offering, which is for the people, and he must bring its blood inside the curtain, and do with its blood the same as he did with the bull's blood, and he must spatter it toward the cover and before the cover. And he must make atonement for the holy place concerning the uncleannesses of the sons of Israel, and concerning their revolts and all their sins. And that is the way he should do for the tent of meeting, which is residing with them in the midst of their uncleannesses. And no other man should happen to be in the tent of meeting from when he goes in to make atonement in the holy place until he comes out. And he must make atonement in behalf of himself, and in behalf of his house, and in behalf of the entire congregation of Israel. And he must come out to the altar, which is before Jehovah, and make atonement for it. And he must take some of the bull's blood and some of the goat's blood, and put it upon the horns of the altar round about. He must also spatter some of the blood upon it with his finger 7 times, and cleanse it and sanctify it from the uncleannesses of the sons of Israel. When he has finished making atonement for the holy place, and the tent of meeting, and the altar, he must also present the live goat. And Aaron must lay both his hands upon the head of the live goat, and confess over it all the errors of the sons of Israel, and all their revolts and all their sins. And he must put them upon the head of the goat, and send it away by the hand of a ready man into the wilderness. And the goat must carry upon itself all their errors into a desert land, and he must send the goat away into the wilderness. And Aaron must come into the tent of meeting and strip off the linen garments that he put on when he went into the holy place, and he must lay them down there. And he must bathe his flesh in water in a holy place, and put on his garments, and come out and render up his burnt offering, and the people's burnt offering, and make atonement in his own behalf and in behalf of the people. And he will make the fat of a sin offering smoke upon the altar. As for the one who sent the goat away for Azazel, he should wash his garments, and he must bathe his flesh in water, and after that he may come into the camp. However, he will have the bull of the sin offering and the goat of the sin offering, the blood of both of which was brought in to make atonement in the holy place, taken forth outside the camp, and they must burn their skins and their flesh and their dung in the fire. And the one who burned them should wash his garments, and he must bathe his flesh in water, and after that he may come into the camp. And it must serve as a statute to time indefinite for you people. In the 7th month, on the 10th of the month, you should afflict your souls, and you must not do any work, either the native or the alien resident who is residing as an alien in your midst. For on this day atonement will be made for you to pronounce you clean. You will be clean from all your sins before Jehovah. It is a Sabbath of complete rest for you, and you must afflict your souls. It is a statute to time indefinite. And the priest who will be anointed, and whose hand will be filled with power to act as priest, as successor of his father, must make an atonement and must put on the linen garments. They are holy garments. And he must make atonement for the holy sanctuary, and for the tent of meeting, and for the altar he will make atonement, and for the priests, and for all the people of the congregation he will make atonement. And this must serve as a statute to time indefinite for you, in order to make atonement for the sons of Israel concerning all their sins once in the year. Accordingly, he did just as Jehovah had commanded Moses. Chapter 17. And Jehovah went on to speak to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons and all the sons of Israel, and you must say to them, This is the thing that Jehovah has commanded, saying, As for any man of the house of Israel who slaughters a bull or a young ram or a goat in the camp, or who slaughters it outside the camp, and does not actually bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to present it as an offering to Jehovah before the tabernacle of Jehovah, blood guilt will be counted to that man. He has shed blood, and that man must be cut off from among his people, in order that the sons of Israel may bring their sacrifices, which they are sacrificing in the open field, and they must bring them to Jehovah to the entrance of the tent of meeting to the priest, and they must sacrifice these as communion sacrifices to Jehovah. And the priest must sprinkle the blood upon Jehovah's altar at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and he must make the fat smoke as a restful odor to Jehovah. So they should no longer sacrifice their sacrifices to the goat-shaped demons with which they are having immoral intercourse. This will serve as a statute to time indefinite for you throughout your generations. And you should say to them, As for any man of the house of Israel, or some alien resident who may be residing as an alien in your midst, who offers up a burnt offering or a sacrifice, and does not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to render it to Jehovah, that man must be cut off from his people. As for any man of the house of Israel, or some alien resident who is residing as an alien in their midst, who eats any sort of blood, I shall certainly set my face against the soul that is eating the blood, and I shall indeed cut him off from among his people. For the soul of the flesh is in the blood, and I myself have put it upon the altar for you to make atonement for your souls, because it is the blood that makes atonement by the soul in it. That is why I have said to the sons of Israel, No soul of you must eat blood, and no alien resident who is residing as an alien in your midst should eat blood. As for any man of the sons of Israel, or some alien resident who is residing as an alien in your midst, who in hunting catches a wild beast or a fowl that may be eaten, he must in that case pour its blood out, and cover it with dust. For the soul of every sort of flesh is its blood by the soul in it. Consequently I said to the sons of Israel, you must not eat the blood of any sort of flesh, because the soul of every sort of flesh is its blood. Anyone eating it will be cut off. As for any soul that eats a body already dead, or something torn by a wild beast, whether a native or an alien resident, he must in that case wash his garments and bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening, and he must be clean. But if he will not wash them, and will not bathe his flesh, he must then answer for his error. Chapter 18. And Jehovah continued to speak to Moses, saying, speak to the sons of Israel, and you must say to them, I am Jehovah your God. The way the land of Egypt does, in which you dwelt, you must not do. And the way the land of Canaan does, into which I am bringing you, you must not do. And in their statutes you must not walk. My judicial decisions you should carry out, and my statutes you should keep, so as to walk in them. I am Jehovah your God. And you must keep my statutes and my judicial decisions, which if a man will do, he must also live by means of them. I am Jehovah. You people must not come near, any man of you, to any close fleshly relative of his to lay bare nakedness. I am Jehovah. The nakedness of your father and the nakedness of your mother you must not lay bare. She is your mother. You must not lay bare her nakedness. The nakedness of your father's wife you must not lay bare. It is your father's nakedness. As for the nakedness of your sister, the daughter of your father, or the daughter of your mother, whether born in the same household or born outside it, you must not lay bare their nakedness. As for the nakedness of the daughter of your son, or the daughter of your daughter, you must not lay bare their nakedness, because they are your nakedness. As for the nakedness of the daughter of your father's wife, the offspring of your father, she being your sister, you must not lay bare her nakedness. The nakedness of your father's sister you must not lay bare. She is the blood relation of your father. The nakedness of your mother's sister you must not lay bare, because she is a blood relation of your mother. The nakedness of your father's brother you must not lay bare. You must not come near his wife. She is your aunt. The nakedness of your daughter-in-law you must not lay bare. She is your son's wife. You must not lay her nakedness bare. The nakedness of your brother's wife you must not lay bare. It is your brother's nakedness. The nakedness of a woman and her daughter you must not lay bare. The daughter of her son and the daughter of her daughter you must not take, in order to lay her nakedness bare. They are cases of blood relationship. It is loose conduct. And you must not take a woman in addition to her sister as a rival to uncover her nakedness, that is, besides her during her lifetime. And you must not come near a woman during the menstruation of her impurity to lay her nakedness bare. And you must not give your emission as semen to the wife of your associate to become unclean by it. And you must not allow the devoting of any of your offspring to Molech. You must not profane the name of your God that way. I am Jehovah. And you must not lie down with a male the same as you lie down with a woman. It is a detestable thing. And you must not give your emission to any beast to become unclean by it, and a woman should not stand before a beast to have connection with it. It is a violation of what is natural. Do not make yourselves unclean by any of these things, because by all these things the nations whom I am sending out from before you have made themselves unclean. Consequently, the land is unclean, and I shall bring punishment for its error upon it, and the land will vomit its inhabitants out. And you yourselves must keep my statutes and my judicial decisions, And you must not do any of all these detestable things, whether a native or an alien resident who is residing as an alien in your midst. For all these detestable things the men of the land who were before you have done, so that the land is unclean. Then the land will not vomit you out for your defiling it, the same way as it will certainly vomit the nations out who were before you. In case anyone does any of all these detestable things, then the souls doing them must be cut off from among their people. And you must keep your obligation to me, not to carry on any of the detestable customs that have been carried on before you, that you may not make yourselves unclean by them. I am Jehovah, your God. Chapter 19. And Jehovah spoke further to Moses, saying, Speak to the entire assembly of the sons of Israel, and you must say to them, You should prove yourselves holy, because I, Jehovah your God, am holy. You should fear each one his mother and his father, and my Sabbaths you should keep. I am Jehovah your God. Do not turn yourselves to valueless gods, and you must not make molten gods for yourselves. I am Jehovah your God. Now, in case you should sacrifice a communion sacrifice to Jehovah, you should sacrifice it to gain approval for yourselves. On the day of your sacrifice, and directly the next day, it should be eaten, but what is left over till the third day should be burned in the fire. If, though, it should at all be eaten on the third day, it is a foul thing. It will not be accepted with approval, and the one eating it will answer for his error, because he has profaned a holy thing of Jehovah, and that soul must be cut off from his people. And when you people reap the harvest of your land, you must not reap the edge of your field completely, and the gleaning of your harvest you must not pick up. Also, you must not gather the leftovers of your vineyard, and you must not pick up the scattered grapes of your vineyard. For the afflicted one and the alien resident you should leave them. I am Jehovah, your God. You people must not steal, and you must not deceive, and you must not deal falsely, anyone with his associate. And you must not swear in my name to a lie, so that you do profane the name of your God. I am Jehovah. You must not defraud your fellow, and you must not rob. The wages of a hired laborer should not stay all night with you until morning. You must not call down evil upon a deaf man, and before a blind man you must not put an obstacle, and you must be in fear of your God. I am Jehovah. You people must not do injustice in the judgment. You must not treat the lowly with partiality, and you must not prefer the person of a great one. With justice you should judge your associate. You must not go around among your people for the sake of slandering. You must not stand up against your fellow's blood. I am Jehovah. You must not hate your brother in your heart. You should by all means reprove your associate, that you may not bear sin along with him. You must not take vengeance nor have a grudge against the sons of your people, and you must love your fellow as yourself. I am Jehovah. You people should keep my statutes. You must not interbreed your domestic animals of two sorts. You must not sow your field with seeds of two sorts, and you must not put upon yourself a garment of two sorts of thread mixed together. Now, in case a man lies down with a woman and has an emission of semen, when she is a maidservant designated for another man, and she has not in any way been redeemed, nor has freedom been given her, punishment should take place. They should not be put to death, because she was not set free. And he must bring his guilt offering to Jehovah to the entrance of the tent of meeting, a ram of guilt offering. And the priest must make atonement for him with the ram of the guilt offering before Jehovah for his sin that he committed. And his sin that he committed must be forgiven him. And in case you people come into the land, and you must plant any tree for food, you must also consider its fruitage impure as its foreskin. For 3 years it will continue uncircumcised for you. It should not be eaten. But in the 4th year, all its fruit will become a holy thing of festal exaltation to Jehovah. And in the 5th year, you may eat its fruit in order to add its produce to yourselves. I am Jehovah your God. You must eat nothing along with blood. You must not look for omens, and you must not practice magic. You must not cut your side locks short around, and you must not destroy the extremity of your beard. And you must not make cuts in your flesh for a deceased soul, and you must not put tattoo marking upon yourselves. I am Jehovah. Do not profane your daughter by making her a prostitute, in order that the land may not commit prostitution, and the land actually be filled with loose morals. My Sabbaths you should keep, and you should stand in awe of my sanctuary. I am Jehovah. Do not turn yourselves to the spirit mediums, and do not consult professional foretellers of events, so as to become unclean by them. I am Jehovah, your God. Before gray hair, you should rise up, and you must show consideration for the person of an old man, and you must be in fear of your God. I am Jehovah. And in case an alien resident resides with you as an alien in your land, you must not mistreat him. The alien resident who resides as an alien with you should become to you like a native of yours, and you must love him as yourself, for you became alien residents in the land of Egypt. I am Jehovah, your God. You must not commit injustice in judging, in measuring, in weighing, or in measuring liquids. You should prove to have accurate scales, accurate weights, an accurate ephah, and an accurate hin. Jehovah your God I am, who have brought you out of the land of Egypt. So you must keep all my statutes and all my judicial decisions, and you must do them. I am Jehovah. Chapter 20. And Jehovah went on speaking to Moses, saying, You are to say to the sons of Israel, Any man of the sons of Israel, and any alien resident who resides as an alien in Israel, who gives any of his offspring to Molech, should be put to death without fail. The people of the land should pelt him to death with stones. And as for me, I shall set my face against that man, and I will cut him off from among his people, because he has given some of his offspring to Molech for the purpose of defiling my holy place and to profane my holy name. And if the people of the land should deliberately hide their eyes from that man when he gives any of his offspring to Molech by not putting him to death, then I, for my part, shall certainly fix my face against that man and his family, and I shall indeed cut him, and all those who have immoral intercourse along with him, in having immoral intercourse with Molech, off from among their people. As for the soul who turns himself to the spirit mediums and the professional foretellers of events, so as to have immoral intercourse with them, I shall certainly set my face against that soul and cut him off from among his people. And you must sanctify yourselves and prove yourselves holy, because I am Jehovah your God. And you must keep my statutes and do them. I am Jehovah, who is sanctifying you. In case there should be any man who calls down evil upon his father and his mother, he should be put to death without fail. It is his father and his mother upon whom he has called down evil. His own blood is upon him. Now a man who commits adultery with another man's wife is one who commits adultery with the wife of his fellow man. He should be put to death without fail, the adulterer and the adulteress as well. And a man who lies down with his father's wife has laid bare the nakedness of his father. Both of them should be put to death without fail. Their own blood is upon them. And where a man lies down with his daughter-in-law, both of them should be put to death without fail. They have committed a violation of what is natural. Their own blood is upon them. And when a man lies down with a male, the same as one lies down with a woman, both both of them have done a detestable thing. They should be put to death without fail. Their own blood is upon them. And where a man takes a woman and her mother, it is loose conduct. They should burn him and them in the fire, in order that loose conduct may not continue in your midst. And where a man gives his seminal emission to a beast, he should be put to death without fail, and you should kill the beast. And where a woman approaches any beast to have a connection with it, you must kill the woman and the beast. They should be put to death without fail. Their own blood is upon them. And where a man takes his sister, the daughter of his father, or the daughter of his mother, and he does see her nakedness, and she herself sees his nakedness, it is shame. So they must be cut off before the eyes of the sons of their people. It is the nakedness of his sister that he has laid bare. He should answer for his error. And where a man lies down with a menstruating woman, and does lay bare her nakedness, he has exposed her source, and she herself has laid bare the source of her blood. So both of them must be cut off from among their people. And the nakedness of your mother's sister, and of your father's sister, you must not lay bare, because it is his blood relation that one has exposed. They should answer for their error. And a man who lies down with his uncle's wife has laid bare the nakedness of his uncle. They should answer for their sin. They should die childless. And where a man takes his brother's wife, it is something abhorrent. It is the nakedness of his brother that he has laid bare. They should become childless. And you people must keep all my statutes and all my judicial decisions and do them, that the land to which I am bringing you to dwell in it may not vomit you out. And you must not walk in the statutes of the nations whom I am sending out from before you, because they have done all these things, and I abhor them. Hence I said to you, you for your part will take possession of their ground, and I for my part shall give it to you to take possession of it, a land flowing with milk and honey. Jehovah your God I am, who have divided you off from the peoples. And you must make a distinction between the clean beast and the unclean, and between the unclean fowl and the clean. And you must not make your souls loathsome with the beast and the fowl, and anything that moves on the ground that I have divided off for you in declaring them unclean. And you must prove yourselves holy to me, because I, Jehovah, am holy, and I am proceeding to divide you off from the peoples to become mine. And as for a man or woman in whom there proves to be a mediumistic spirit or spirit of prediction, they should be put to death without fail. They should pelt them to death with stones. Their own blood is upon them. Chapter 21. And Jehovah went on to say to Moses, talk to the priests, Aaron's sons, and you must say to them, for a deceased soul no one may defile himself among his people. But for a blood relation of his who is close to him, for his mother and for his father, and for his son and for his daughter, and for his brother and for his sister, a virgin who is close to him, who has not become a man's, for her he may defile himself. He may not defile himself for a woman possessed by an owner among his people so as to make himself profane.